Good afternoon, daily members. Let us close the market.
Well, trading has come to an end this Tuesday, and the bearish sentiment continued on Monday as we saw it yesterday, and we do not know how that will end this Tuesday. But Effiong Gekop will join us later. We saw that losses in the banking sector turned the all-share index negative as market activity was at its lowest yesterday. We'll turn to Effiong Gekop later on Business Nigeria. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. Just as South Africa's state-owned utility Eskom grapples with its power problem, Nigeria is also addressing its power challenges. 5 firms have now made bid to acquire Afam Power and Yola electricity distribution and generation companies. Now, with a current capacity of about 1,300 megawatts, Afam Power Plant alone, if acquired, has the potential to make the bidder the biggest power producer in Nigeria, and that's with a capacity of about 2,200 megawatts. Well, Nigeria and South Africa, we know, are the biggest economies in Africa, but electricity seem to be testing their powers. But just as power is a big deal for Nigeria, oil is a bigger deal, and experts say if reforms are not made in that sector, the country may head the Venezuelan way. The Petroleum Industry Governance Bill is in focus today. This is Business Nigeria. Well, just before we get on to the discussion, let's bring you this news. The Central Bank of Nigeria has extended the deadline for the recapitalization of microfinance banks to 2021. Last year, the CBN raised the capital base for MFBs with a 2020 deadline. Now, it increased the minimum capital base for national MFMBs to 5 billion naira from 2 billion naira, while that of state was increased to 1 billion naira from 100 million naira. Now, this latest move will ensure continuous operations of microfinance banks in the rural unbanked and underbanked areas of the economy. Well, non-compliance of laws guiding import and export processes in Nigeria has been identified as a major impediment to clearance and timely release of cargoes from the port. But non-conformity to guidelines may be frustrating trade. Let's hear from correspondent Ifunanya Eze.
Besides facilitating trade, the Nigeria Customs Service also generates revenue for government. At a handover ceremony at the Apapa Customs Command, the newly promoted Acting Assistant Comptroller General Bashir Abubakar stated that even with the huge revenue collections from import duties and levies, export business remains a major economic driver.
Every country that is proud of its economy hinges more of its ability on the quantum of export proceeds. With regards to Nigeria and with regards to Nigerian Customs Service, we are seeing a lot of improvement with regards to export.
While identifying major impediments to export promotion, an exporter complained about recurring losses.
The people that are in charge of executing government policies, if they are doing what they're supposed to do, we will not have all this green law. Before this goods gets to that place and it is being rejected and they bring back the containers to Nigeria, these losses comes in millions of dollars.
But the customs management is blaming non-conformity to trade guidelines.
The major problem we have is still the compliance. Compliance in the sense that if declarants, that is the importers or their representative, if they are declaring items exactly the way they import them, there will be no issues.
When I stopped over 2,000 containers from export, I realized a lot of them don't even know the documents to process, talk less of delays. A typical Nigerian wants, if he wants a situation where, how do I get my thing done the way I want? It is not like that internationally.
The conviction is that adherence to extant laws will guarantee seamless operations in line with the ease of doing business mandate of government. Ifunanya Eze, TVC News, Lagos.
Nigeria State Oil Corporation (NNPC) has recorded trade surplus of 12.13 billion naira, and that as at last December. NNPC's upstream subsidiary, Nigeria Petroleum Development Company, is responsible for that high revenue turnout. Nigeria's crude production driver in that subsidiary achieved an average weekly production of 332,000 barrels per day in December from 130,000 barrels per day in November. Now, positive development from NNPC, I must say, but there are indications that Nigeria's petroleum sector is burdened by market and governance failures, and with warnings to the country to learn from the Venezuelan example. Let's look at this, and so as not to head into that kind of crisis that Venezuela is going or is witnessing at the moment, let's talk to Executive Director, Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy, Leonard Ugbaja. He joins me from Abuja to discuss this development. Thank you, Leonard. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, there are indications. First off, let's begin with this latest news of the trade surplus. Nigeria says it recorded some trade surplus with its subsidiary SPDC in December. How good is that for us?
Well, it's a positive development. If you look at the performance of the entire NNPC as a whole, over time it's been fluctuating, but fluctuating more towards the negative part of it. So you've seen a lot of deficit over time. So when we get this kind of news of surplus from the market, it's a positive one, but that doesn't really address the issues in the industry, really.
Issues in the industry and the country and lawmakers have been looking at the petroleum industry bill. Yes, we had a headway with the PIG bill, but it's still in focus. And many are saying that if something new is not done, if reforms are not made with the laws, then we might head the Venezuelan way. How do we begin to address this?
Well, basically, the move to reform this industry, the oil and gas industry, you could say, started in 2002 when the former president Obasanjo considered the Oil and Gas Implementation Committee. So that tells you that we realized about 17 years ago that we needed to take some drastic steps to change the operational and fiscal framework of the oil and gas industry. But, well, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get to do that. And the immediate implication, basically, is that we have an industry that is operating under a situation of uncertainty. And anybody who is in the business world will tell you that you can try to model risk in different ways and try to mitigate, but when you have an uncertain environment, basically you don't have a response to it. So the only response you have to an uncertain environment is just to sit down and watch and see how things develop. And basically that's what has happened in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. New investment decisions cannot be made because the regulatory framework is uncertain. Nobody is sure of where the government is going. The Petroleum Industry Governance Bill marked, if you like, a clear departure from this. Unfortunately, it hasn't been signed by the president. Some issues between the presidency and the legislature. Otherwise, if we had the governance bill, which, by the way, is just a part of the entire package, signed by now, that would have been a clear indication of the direction Nigeria is going in carrying out the much needed reforms in the industry. So basically where we are at a place of uncertainty. We are at a place where industry players cannot take definite decisions. And the implication for this really is that we're not able to increase our production. And if you can't increase your production, then you cannot gain much value from the industry, and especially in a period where Nigeria needs all the money it can get to cover up the budget deficits and drive infrastructure development. And to make the matter worse, we have more African countries discovering oil. Just close to us, we have Ghana. You have recently South Africa, that has been a major buyer of our oil, has come to the market too. So when you look at all this, you realize that investors would rather go to where the market is certain. Except, of course, you want to guarantee them a return that is a premium on their return that covers the risk, but we're not having that at the moment in the market. So basically, the market is uncertain, investment decisions are not being made, and we're not producing what we ought to produce.
Yes, looking at the positives now, because signing that bill into law has a lot of positives that comes with it. And let's look at the other part of the petroleum industry bill. That's the one that pertains to communities, the host communities, and the impact of this. If this is signed into law, and just like you said, before this oil runs dry, how do you think signing that bill into law will affect the host communities?
Well, for the host and impacted communities bill is one of the 4 split up bills of the petroleum industry bill. And basically what it's supposed to do is to institutionalize some of the ad hoc community development projects that the oil companies embark on. So you have an institutional framework that has a trust, and then has clearly defined projects, and then has budgetary allocation coming from the oil companies to run. So in principle, really, the host and impacted communities bill would mark a shift from how the oil companies relate with the communities. But even at that, the bill still has a lot of issues, especially when it comes to the administration. I've had some people from the oil communities say that the administrative framework is not accommodating enough of their interests. So basically, yes, there is positive in the petroleum host and impacted communities bill. It will ensure consistent channeling of resources to high impact issues like health, like education, entrepreneurship development. Hopefully, it marks a departure from the culture of sharing money just to community leaders and community members. So there's a positive in that, just as there are positives in the other components of the PIB.
All right, Leonard, a lot of positives comes with it, and a lot of call going to the Assembly, and a synergy between the executive and the lawmakers to look critically into this bill and make the reforms, the necessary reforms that would ensure the growth of the Nigerian economy. Leo Baja, Executive Director, Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy, thank you for your time. Well, after the break, we'll be looking at access to credit for Nigerians. Well, the report we are getting says about 98% of Nigerians do not have access to credit. Do stay with us on Business Nigeria.